Yes. Well, we're back, and I think we have Miss Solange Baptist, Manager of Information Services at the Antigua and Barbuda Bureau of Standards. Miss Baptist, are you there?
Yes, good afternoon, and good afternoon to your audiences.
Excellent. All right, and today you wanted to talk about what is certification.
Right. So I think this topic really was supposed to come up sometime before, but of course, well, we had a few missed weeks. But yes, certification. One persons would recall we looked at standards. We looked at the Bureau's mandate. We would have looked at metrology for I think the last 2 weeks. And certification is just another part of the whole process of, one of the processes within the standards mandate. And the certification is basically a written assurance by a third party of the conformity of a product, a process, or a service to the specified requirements. So we would recall that when we spoke about standards, we spoke about specifications, we spoke about guidelines and codes of practice. So conformity to one of these types of, if you want to say standards or standardization, and a written assurance that persons or a product or service has met these requirements or a process has met these requirements would be the certification to a standard, right? It is also used for verifying that personnel have adequate credentials to practice certain disciplines, as well as verifying that products and services, again, meet certain requirements. And I know one of the typical, but sometimes ticklish areas to look at certification is, more in an academic sense. But we understand, especially at this time where persons would have had their CSEC results come out and so forth, or even your university results, you will get an actual document which says this is a certificate that you have attained a certain level of academic qualification, right?
Yes.
So that is one of the, if you want to say, one of those that will come to mind at this time. But other than that, there are many persons who attain maybe a certain proficiency or competence in a particular specialized area, and you might go into their offices and see their certificate up, or a particular product meets a certain level of excellence, and you might see a brand or a seal or some special marking on the label to signify that this particular product is certified to a certain standard.
Certified organic.
Certified organic. That is an interesting one. But yes, of course, you would have to know what standard of organic is being used here.
Mm-hmm.
A typical one is things being certified to the ISO 9001, or when in electronics, you might see UL or CE certification, for example, and those are specific standards that those particular electronic products might be certified to.
Okay.
But apart from the marking, very often you actually literally have a document that says it is certified to X or Y standard. Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
So the certification in that case would provide for a certificate or a mark of approval. And approval here we're talking about of conformity or compliance that would be issued with, that product or service. And, of course, there's a contrast with accreditation, where accreditation must now be accompanied by a certain scope. So one would recall when we spoke about accreditation, we spoke about being accredited. That, for example, if you're speaking about a laboratory services, they would maybe speak to a particular test, lab test that is accredited, and they would tell you within what scope. So it may not be everything that this lab does, but for this particular test or group of tests, this lab would be accredited to actually perform those tests. So there is a little difference sometimes. These are some terms that persons might get confused or might be tempted to use interchangeably, but they're not interchangeable. Right?
Yes.
Yes, so just saying a little more. So we have an idea what certification is. What is the benefit of certification? I would note, of course, that you had on Ms. Peters from Consumer Affairs, and I didn't capture what product or type of services she was talking about this time around, but typically the benefit of certification is to establish confidence and trust in a product or service or methods of testing, for example. And the benefit applies to the recognition or acknowledgement or the assurance of the performance within a particular product or service. So that is one of the benefits of certification for, the consumer, is being able to build a confidence and trust in what is being received or what's being paid for.
Yes. In this case, we're talking about a seamstress, so I guess they could receive certification for their specific skill as well.
For their competence, right?
Okay.
Indeed. Indeed.
And then you'd be able to trust their ability to provide, the service that you're looking for, so that a person's pants isn't 3 times as large as it should be and all of that stuff.
Or the other way around.
Oh, boy.
Indeed.
Yes.
We did take a brief consideration of a difference between certification and accreditation, but further to that, certificates of conformity and compliance are actually awarded by certification bodies. Right? And accreditation now is an independent third-party endorsement of a certification body's impartiality and competence. And that is very important for accreditation because basically you don't want a person, more or less saying, okay, even though I produce this product, I'm going to tell you and I insist that I'm doing it correctly. It needs to be a third-party endorsement of a certification body, and that this body has operated with impartiality as well as the competence that is required.
So you're saying certificates of conformity or compliance are awarded by certification bodies, and
right.
Those certification bodies are not third parties?
No, because the certification bodies, in our context, might be more like our regulatory body, right? So I may have used this example before. So, for example, a shout out to our Central Board of Health. That is our competent authority for food safety.
Okay.
Right? So if they are going to issue a certificate, let's say to a business place to say that they're operating according to our food safety laws, they may just write them a letter to say that, or they might say, write them a letter to say, for example, I'm not saying this is what happens. I'm just using them as maybe an example. And to say, if they, for example, establish that you have met the requirements of our food safety laws in terms of what we have audited you for, in your operation or the layout of your building or whatever. So if it was that they were then giving you a record to say that you have met the requirements. That record, whether it be a letter or an actual, certificate form type thing that as we know it, that would be their certificate of conformity.
Okay.
Right?
And how is that different from the independent third-party endorsement of the accreditation body?
The third-party endorsement that we were talking about is accreditation. So someone, maybe an international body, for example, let's say a representative of the World Health Organization, for example, or PAHO, for example, might come now to observe the administration of our CBH, right? To see that the health inspectors and so on are competent and impartial in the certification of business places and food handlers and so on in the course of their work. So the accreditation is more like the endorsement of the certification body. And the certification body, I used an example to say, who we might commonly look at or may present as our regulators, typically in country, would be the ones offering the certification to, the specific laws and acts and standards that, they regulate for, or they would need us, the consumers, business places, etc., to conform to.
All right. Yeah, I think I got that. Excellent. All right. Okay. So, thank you so much. Look forward to hearing more from you. You'll be back on next week, I hope.
Yes, next week and the week after we will speak a little about quality.
Okay.
I think that will be an interesting topic. And if I may, I would just want to encourage persons, if you've heard anything through this medium or, and you're interested to find out more about standards and the nuances of standards, etc., feel free to contact the Bureau of Standards. We're here on Old Barbuda.
All right. Thanks again, Ms. Solange Baptiste.
Thank you.